Are there any amendments or corrections to the PSI, starting with people?
Your Honor, the only thing I noticed was that the pre-sentence investigation report did not include the counts as they relate to the findings of deadly weapon.
I thought I saw that, but maybe I was reading some different material. All right. Well, that was consistent with the jury's verdict. Any amendments or corrections by defense?
Yes, Your Honor. If I can ask the court to focus on page 5 of the PSI.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Second paragraph, family background support system. Mr. Mederos is married. For whatever reason, they indicated that he denied being married. He also is a father of a 6-year-old son. And just for the record, the spelling of his wife's name is A as in Adam, Z as in zebra, Q as in queen, U as in union, E as in Edward, R as in Robert, I as in Ida, and S as in Sam. Other than that, I don't have any additions or corrections.
Thank you, I've noted that. I'll hear first from defense counsel or anyone who wants to speak on behalf of the defendant.
Your Honor, the defense would like Yoel Varela to address the court, who's present in the courtroom.
All right.
Can I put up the honor?
If you'll come to the podium, sir.
How you doing, John?
I'm well. If you'd state your name and give us the spelling of your last name, please, sir, and then I'll hear from you.
My name is Y-O-E-L. It's Joel Varela Diaz.
All right, sir.
You want me to say my testimony over here?
I'll hear what you have to say, sir.
To a lot of people over here look probably like a criminal person. That young guy right there. He was a truck driver. But I don't see anything over here that said that this guy, when he was 18 years old, he was donated for St. Louis for over a year for all these kids with cancer. And nobody mentioned anything around here. So that's why he looked like a criminal to a lot of people's crowd in this courtroom. This is a young guy who don't deserve to go to jail for so many years after he was working when he was 18 years old, soon he came to the United States. And I've been a truck driver in the United States for over 28 years. And when my father, I grew up in truck driving all my life. When you lose your grade, you don't have nothing to do. Just keep going. You don't have no way to stop that truck. We're talking about over 8,000 pounds. No way you're gonna stop that truck. I've been driving trucks all across country, United States, and I've been so many accidents, and I've been seeing with my own eyes. And there's no way, and I want to say something, my condolence for all the people that lost their life, and there's nothing they're gonna go back to his life because they lose something, they really love it, you know, but destroy the life for the only survive, and this accident, it's killing a family, it's killing a young kid with a whole future. Just because an accident. Your decision, I know it's gonna be the right decision, and I know a lot of people's against to him right now, but if you guys lost the brake one day in life, you don't have no way to handle, to stop that truck. It's unbelievable when you lost the brake. I lost the brake before in my life, and I was driving probably 16 years ago. And I was so lucky that nobody was in front of me, because I would be facing the same thing he's facing right now. Just put your hands in your heart and just think about it. When you lost the brake, you don't have nothing else to do. Nothing. It's a wonderful kid, young kid, beautiful family, a lot of love for him. All we million truck drivers waiting right now for this news because they're about to quit. I swear to God, Your Honor, I will destroy my license, my civil license. If this sentence to destroy that guy's life. This is unbelievable. It's an accident, Your Honor. It's an accident, I swear to God. I trust God and I trust all you guys and I trust your decision, but it's a beautiful family, beautiful kid. 6 years or something waiting for him. I guess I left the rest for all you guys and I'm sorry for all the inconvenience. But to me, he don't look like a criminal. He look like a wonderful kid that he be working all his life when he comes to the United States. And like I said before, donating a lot of money for St. Louis when he was 18 years old. And I don't see anybody mentioning this over here. We also got the statement for the bank that they was taking money for his account every month. He got a beautiful heart. It's a wonderful kid, Your Honor. Thank you so much, and God bless all you guys. We over here just because God wants you here, and we gotta show God that we have a heart, you know. My English not the best. Probably somebody don't like my accent. This is the best country I ever seen in my life. I came to the United States in a truck tire 82, and I'm ready to give my life for this country anytime they want me. And I'm definitely sure this kid right there, can do the same thing. It's a wonderful kid. God bless you, Your Honor. God bless all you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Juanita Bailey.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And again, please state your name.
Nuevamente, por favor, diga su nombre.
Aguilera-Mederos.
Aguilera-Mederos.
I'll hear what you have to say.
Dígame lo que me quiere decir.
Ay, señor güey, yo lo único que le pido, yo sé que quizás no se pueda, pero que usted me haga el favor de tomar un tiempo para que revise esto que yo le traigo. Yo sé que quizás no se pueda, pero te pido, por el amor de Dios, revise esto. 5 minutos.
Judge, I would like to ask you, I'm not sure if this is going to be possible, but I'd like to ask for a favor. I would like for you to take the time to please review what I brought. I ask you, God willing, I would like for you to review this. It will take you 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking.
I don't know what it is you brought that you want me to read. Mr. Colgan, have these things been shared with you? Can you help me as to what it is being requested?
I just had a chance to glance at these first thing today. They did me 3 copies, so I believe that what I remembered seeing was something from Facebook discussing the number of signatures that had been produced as to support of Mr. Mederos. And then some credit card bills, I believe that it's going to be discussed by a couple members of his family. I'm sorry? So, Your Honor, from what I could see, those are the things that I think would be appropriate for the court to take a look at.
If there's an extra copy for you to share with
I will.
people.
I will. Let me approach
You
him.
may. I've reviewed them, ma'am.
Ya las revisó, señor.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Lorena Esquires.
No, sir. She can do it. That's his wife, she can do it. She's big pain. You know? Avoid her.
Antonio Moreno, yeah.
Ante todo, buenas tardes a usted, señor juez, y a todas las personas.
Before
Cae en la
anything
sala.
else, good afternoon, Judge, and good afternoon to everybody who is here present in this courtroom.
Desde lo más profundo de mi corazón, antes de todo, mis condolencias para esa familia que por ese accidente perdieron la familia.
And from the bottom of my heart, I would like to, before I say anything else, express my true remorse to all of the victims of this accident and for all of those who lost family members as a result of it.
And please confirm, Antonio Moreno,
¿Es usted Antonio Moreno, señor?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
you can continue.
Muy bien, ¿puede continuar?
Ok. Yo sé que todas las personas de aquí de esta sala tenemos hermanos y yo soy el hermano de Rogel Aguilera-Mederos.
Okay, so I know that all the people here in this courtroom have brothers, and I am the brother of Lázaro Aguilera-Mederos.
Sin ofender las familias de nadie, pero yo creo que ese es uno de los mejores hermanos que he conocido yo en mi vida y una de las mejores personas que he conocido yo en mi vida. Nosotros tenemos hijos chiquitos, nosotros somos buenas personas. Vinimos a este país, a esta gran nación, a trabajar y a ser una mejor persona cada día. Nosotros amamos a este país.
Amen. So I don't want to offend any of the families here, but this is the best brother anybody could have. He is the best person I know. We both have small children and we are good people. We came to this great nation in order to work, and we love this nation.
Señor, no me encuentro nervioso, me encuentro emocionado por el gran trabajo que ha hecho usted, Señor, porque realmente usted ha sido la persona que ha llevado todo esto a cabo justamente. Señor, le estoy agradecido con su buen y hermoso trabajo y su decisión será la más correcta, Señor. Es todo. Que Dios nos bendiga.
So I am not nervous, I am very excited because of the great job that you did, Judge. I think that you were the person that handled all of this situation, and I think that you did everything in a very fair manner. I am very thankful for the wonderful and beautiful job that you did, and I know that you will be making the right decision. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oscar Hernandez, you know?
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Oscar Aguilera.
Good afternoon, my name is Oscar Riolova.
Good afternoon.
Buenas tardes.
Yo solo quiero decir, yo tengo 26 años. Yo lo conozco a él desde que tengo 4 años. Venimos de la misma ciudad, del mismo pueblo de Cuba. Y yo te puedo decirte, él es más que mi familia. Yo aquí no tengo familia. Y yo solo tengo a él. Y él siempre está en mi peor momento. Y yo solo espero que sea una buena decisión. Y lo siento mucho por la familia que se perdió en el accidente, pero eso fue un accidente. Yo no me soy camionero.
I only want to say that I am 26 years old, and I have known him since I was 4 years old. We come from the same town, from the same city in Cuba, and he is more to me than my own family. I don't have any family here, and he's been there for me in my worst moments. I trust that you will make the right decision, and I'm also very sorry for the people that lost family members in this accident.
Y yo también soy camionero. Y es como decía Joel, cuando tú pierdes los frenos, son 80,000 libras, tú no puedes frenar el camión. No se puede.
I am also a truck driver, and I know that when you're handling 80,000 pounds of cargo, you can't stop the trailer.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And that is all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gracias, señor.
Daniel Labastuda, you know?
Daniela Bastida.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Daniel Bastida.
Good afternoon, my name is Daniel Labastida.
All right, sir.
Buenas tardes, señor.
Yo solo vengo a esta sala, soy camionero también. No sé qué decirle desde que nací, ando ligando. Conmigo tres, ¿ves ahí? Conmigo tres. Ando ligando yo desde que nací. Soy mucho más que mi familia. Y si usted quiere conocer a una bella persona, mire la cara de ese niño, mire. Si quiere conocer a una bella persona, mire. Ese niño, ¿viste ahí? Ese niño donaba para los niños con cáncer.
So I just came to this courtroom because I am also a truck driver, and I don't know what to tell you, but I've known this family since I was born, and I've been with them, and they are more than my family. If you want to know a good person, all you have to do is to look at him. This is a young kid that would donate to people that had cancer.
Mi condolencia, primero que todo, para los familiares que se perdieron. Nadie quería que sucediera algo así.
And I would like to apologize to the people that lost family members because we didn't want that to happen.
Y yo le voy a decir la verdad, yo soy camionero y vine hoy precisamente para ver qué es lo que sucede cuando un camionero tiene un accidente.
And I am a truck driver, and I came here today to see what would happen to a truck driver that was in an accident.
Muchas personas no conocen la responsabilidad que tiene un camionero.
A lot of people are not aware of the responsibility that a truck driver has.
Y el día de hoy llegué para saber qué es lo que sucede cuando uno tiene un accidente para yo retirarme y entregar mi licencia.
And I am here to see what would happen if somebody had an accident and ready to turn in my license myself.
Es todo, señor. Gracias.
That is all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gracias, señor.
I believe that's it. I'm sorry, Your Honor, there's one more. Robin Rodriguez? Ryder? Who? He's not here? I'm sorry, Your Honor, I guess that is it. I'm sorry.
I'll hear from you, Mr. Colby.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I get started, my client wanted to make sure that the court and the staff of this courthouse recognizes the fact that he truly believes that he was treated with respect and that he truly appreciates that. You know, since I first met Mr. Mederos, one of the first things he said to me when I first met him was he wished he would have had the courage to kill himself during this incident. And every time I met with him over the last year and a half, that subject came up, is that it seems somewhat shallow, I suppose, to have him say that he would trade his life for the ones that died, but it really is, it's true. He would trade his life for the people that died. And we went over the PSI, we went over the victim impact statements. Some of the families have offered him his forgiveness, and I can tell the people that offered him his forgiveness, he was so overwhelmed, he was literally on the floor with, I guess it was relief that someone was magnanimous enough to offer him their complete forgiveness. He has asked for forgiveness, but I explained to him it's really something that he cannot ask for. It's something that has to be given to people by their own free will. And he does ask, he's not begging, but he is asking that people find it in their hearts to forgive him. It would be extraordinarily arrogant for me to say that I understand how the families feel. I've had loved ones killed in car accidents, disease, and all I can say is I am truly sorry. I know my client is truly sorry that those people are not still with us, but I can't say that I truly understand how they feel. But my client is obviously someone that's life is impacted by this. There are no winners here, Judge. No one wins, no matter what. We have a courtroom full of broken lives, and so no one's gonna win here today. And it's just tragic. There's no other way to put it. But I understand that this court has a job to do, and frankly, I would not wish to be in your shoes, because this is an extraordinarily tough decision for you to make. Mr. Mederos, I want the court to know, is a extraordinarily devout Christian. In addition to what I've already told you about, every time I would see him, he would say, is it okay if I pray for everybody? And he would do that, and he would tell me, he would send me messages that I have prayed for everybody. And I believe him when he said he did, because his faith came up almost every time that I talked to him. He He loves his wife, he's a doting father, he is a permanent resident of the United States. He's worked since he was 18 years old, was always a very good provider, and he obviously has no criminal history. But one of the failures of Mr. Mederos is that while he's a good father, a doting husband, one of the things that he kind of suffered from in this course of action that happened on this particular occasion is as the court could see, he's a very abstract thinker, or a very concrete thinker, I'm sorry. He couldn't really foresee his actions, and it became very unfortunate that we had a series of negligent decisions that in and of themselves wouldn't result in a catastrophe. But when we have a series of negligent decisions that one rolls upon top of the other, we get to the point where he was, and I still stand by this, he was overwhelmed by the situation and simply didn't know what to do. Now the jury has spoken, the jury reached its verdict, the jury has said that he's guilty and he needs to face punishment. But I still maintain that it was a series of negligent decisions, and that is kind of a hole in the law, that our law does not recognize the difference between somebody that makes a series of negligent decisions, such as this, and a series of intentional decisions, such as mass shootings in movie theaters and schools. There's a huge difference between Mr. Mederos and people that shoot up schools and shoot up movie theaters, yet it's defined as extreme indifference under the law. The jury can find that both people acted with extreme indifference when the culpability is light and day. On opposite ends of the spectrum, this system simply has to have some way to determine and to be able to discern the difference between Mr. Mederos' actions and the actions of someone that intentionally loads a clip into a gun, intentionally unloads that clip, loads yet another clip, puts in yet another clip, starts out their day saying, this is how I'm going to end my day. The court knows that isn't what happened here. It didn't start out with Mr. Mederos saying, I hope that 4 people are dead by the end of my day. That isn't what happened. Yet, when you look at the sentencing structure that this court has to work with, when you look at simply the crimes of violence that exist, there are 6 F3 felonies. The minimum mandatory of each of those crimes of violence is 10 years. If they're run consecutive, they're extraordinary risk. Each of those carry a minimum of 10 years. Then you get down to the F4s, you've got 10 of those. The mandatory minimum of those extraordinary risk crimes of violence is 5 years per count. So if the court decides to run those sentences consecutively, he's looking at a minimum of 110 years. That's a life sentence. For all intents and purposes, that's a life sentence. And for the law to treat Mr. Mederos,
Mr. Colgan,
yes.
has the legislature given me any other option?
Well, I'm just about to get to that, you know what I mean?
All right.
I'm just about to get to that. The legislature hasn't given you any of the option, but I do believe the courts have. And I believe that if the court follows the reasoning of Robles versus People, which is 811 P. 2nd, 804, it's Colorado Supreme Court, 1991. That was decided under 1611-309, not the current statute 1.3406. I do believe that Robles is still good law and the reasoning still exists. And I believe under Robles, a person convicted of 2 or more crimes of violence, which that obviously exists here, arising out of the same incident. So arising out of the same incident is a very important piece for this court. is not required to sentence people convicted of more than 2 crimes of violence to consecutive sentences. The way I read Robles, and I believe it's consistent with my interpretation, is that the court can sentence Mr. Mederos to 2 sentences, 2 consecutive sentences of crimes of violence, and then is allowed on sentences 3 through 16, for example. You can run those concurrent with the first 2 consecutive sentences. I believe that you can do that, and I think Robles gives you the authority to do that. In Robles, the defendant was convicted of, in Robles, the defendant was convicted of first-degree assault, first-degree burglary, aggravated motor vehicle theft, and 7 counts of crimes of violence. The minimum mandatory in that particular case was 112 years. And that's the holding of Robles, is that the sentencing statute requiring that the person convicted of 2 separate crimes of violence arising out of the same incident did not require the court to run more than 2 of those crimes of violence consecutive, and does not require consecutive sentences in each of those additional counts. So, Your Honor, by my calculation, if the court were to sentence Mr. Mederos to 2 consecutive sentences of, say, F3, that would make the minimum 20 years, as opposed to the 110 years. And I believe that I know that the prosecution is going to have people stand up, and they're going to demand that this court dispense justice for the victims. And I understand that anger, I do. But if we don't have a justice system that understands that mercy is also a necessary part of that system, and if we don't have a system that understands there are shades of culpability, we're back in the Middle Ages. We have 1 crime, 1 sentence, everybody's treated the same. There are many justice systems in this world that treat people convicted of crimes like that. This isn't one. This system isn't one. That's why this system is the best system in the world. It's got its moments. God knows it's got its moments. But Your Honor, I believe that the case law does give you the authority to sentence him something much, much closer to 20 years than the minimum mandatory of 110 years. And I truly believe that this court can recognize there's a difference between Mr. Mederos and the situations that we've talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the people.
Your Honor, we propose the following. If the court will allow, we have 4 individuals that feel that they can't read to their victim impact statements to the court. We would, they do want their voices to be heard, however, so we would ask that co-counsel be allowed to read their victim impact statements and their statement to the court. And then we possibly have 8 or 9 individuals who'd like to speak, and I believe them to be brief.
Right. Let me just say that I have read every victim impact statement that was submitted both recently, and I went back through the electronic file for a few folks who had submitted statements much earlier in the case, and I read those as well. So I want anyone who wrote such a statement to be reassured they have been read and carefully considered by me. But I will also allow council to read statements so
Thank you.
everyone can hear those statements, not just me.
Absolutely, Your Honor, we let them know that that was the case as well.
All right.
And Your Honor, just so the court knows, we did get an additional one right before sentencing. If I could approach and give that to the court, I think it suffices just for defense and the court to review it.
You may.
This is for Juanita Bailey. My name is Juanita Bailey. I am Bill Bailey's mother. I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Who is Bill Bailey? He was my firstborn son. He was kind, smart, funny, and a loving person. He put others ahead of himself. At one point, when I was having a hard time financially, he had helped me, but I cried because I needed the help. He asked, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I hate to ask for money." All he said was, "How many times did you go without to raise us? It's my turn now to return the favor and help you out." He loved building rockets and flying them. In fact, he loved anything that flew. Mothers should never have to bury their son. I will no longer get to see his smiling face. Yeah, I believe she would like to read her statement.
I have a handheld mic. Counsel.
Oh, okay. Do I leave the mask on? Okay. My name is Juanita Bailey. I am Bill Bailey's mother. I would like to tell you a little bit about him. Who was Bill Bailey? He was my firstborn son. He was a kind, smart, funny, and loving person. He put others ahead of himself. At one point when I was having a hard time financially, he helped me out. I cried because I needed the help. He asked me, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I hate to ask for money." All he said was, "How many times did you go without to raise us? It's my turn now to return the favor and help you out." He loved building rockets and flying them. In fact, he loved anything that flew. A mother should never have to bury their son. I will no longer get to see his smiling face or get great hugs from him. He was taken away from me in an instant by the actions of a selfish person, so different from my son. He didn't deserve that. The truck driver was the opposite of my son. His only thoughts were of himself. When he didn't take the truck ramp, he says he didn't take the truck ramp because he was afraid the truck would tip over. He kept making these bad choices, even to the last choice to turn into the stop traffic instead of hitting the back of a stopped semi, always thinking of himself and not what could happen to him. Thank you for giving me a chance, or happen to others. Thank you for giving me a chance.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is from Anita Bailey. My name is Anita Bailey. Bill Bailey was my brother. Bill was a very loving and caring person. He loved to fly kites, model airplanes, and model rockets. When I was in 6th grade, I did a book report on Robert Goddard, the man that built the first rocket. Bill suggested that we should build a model rocket of Robert Goddard's first rocket, and he would come to my school and launch it off for me. With his help, I got an A on my report. My brother might not have been famous, but he was very important to me and my family. When he died on April 25th of 2019, it left a very big hole in our hearts that will never be whole again. And this is from Barbara Harrison, or Barbie. She said, "My father died, leaving behind gaping holes in our family's hearts, our daily lives, our routines. I have lost our best supporter, a loyal advisor, a giving friend and father who loved me unconditionally. He loved loud, and I hope to make him proud of all I've overcome. The defendant should be given time and confinement to truly understand his decisions and how to make better ones. Then, he should be allowed to try and resume on ordinary life, knowing that my family forgives him." And lastly, I have one from Nick Politano. "My name is Nicholas Politano. I am the oldest son of Stanley Politano, who is one of the victims killed on April 25th, 2019. Stan fulfilled so many roles in his lifetime that was tragically ended on April 25th of 2019. He was the best husband, father, grandfather, friend, mentor, and neighbor I have ever encountered. As time has gone on from the day he was killed, it becomes more apparent to myself and my family how much he is missed and loved. There's not a day that goes by that he is not remembered and embraced. As a husband, he cared for his wife Kathy in every capacity possible. A relationship that has been in place for greater than 50 years is no longer possible on a daily basis. He's forever remembered as a person that truly placed the needs of his family above his own. Kathy will no longer have Stan next to her side. As a father, I miss his love, mentorship, and his company. He's the best at teaching and mentoring his family as the patriarch to navigate life's daily hurdles. I can no longer talk or learn from him in his role. As a grandfather, he is missed in the greatest capacity. Stan was wonderful about loving and teaching his grandchildren. He aspired to spend time with them as he was transitioning to retirement. My heart aches each and every day that his grandchildren will never know Stan the way that I knew him. My wife and I will continue to teach our children about Stan and the tremendous person he was in life. As a friend, Stan fulfilled this role for so many people. He was always there to listen and help in everyone's time of need. His friends knew that he was always there for him in a time of need. His friends will no longer have Stan to help him with this role. As a business professional and mentor, Stan maintained core values that he instilled in his coworkers and colleagues. These core values are remembered and practiced each day in honor of Stan. As a neighbor, Stan was always giving back to his community and church, Spirit of Christ Catholic community in Arvada, Colorado. It was his goal to give back to the community as much as possible. The community has truly lost a wonderful volunteer and advocate for a better Jefferson County. As I reflect back on all of Stan's core values, there's one core value that continues to resonate with his memory: accountability. We ask that the judge and court maintain this core value in their minds and hearts moving forward in this case and sentencing. There should be accountability on the part of the defendant for Stan and all the victims of the I-70 crash on April 25th of 2019. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Your Honor, we now have a number of people that would like to address the court as well, if the court will allow that.
Yes, and again, anyone who does not agree to be videoed, just let me know as they approach.
And Your Honor, first to speak, we would ask Ms. Kathleen Harrison.
If you'd state your name to start with, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name's Kathleen Harrison, and my husband Doyle his life was claimed on that accident. And he was my one and only husband. We were married for 26 years, and it took us a long time to find each other. He was 35, I was 30, and when we got married, and he was pretty unique. An artist, raised on a ranch, loved animals, was the animal whisperer. He loved me and our family, and he was just a strong and dedicated man. And all of us, we'll never find another Doyle. He impacted a lot of people. Nearly 300 to 400 people showed up at the funeral. He was the driving force in our family, a motivator. He's intelligent, wise. I find myself sometimes thinking, okay, when I'm faced with a problem, what would Doyle do here? So I was striving for excellence in his career here at Jefferson County, and took care of us very well. He was Mr. Mom's on the days that I worked, and took care of everything on our 5-acre property, and always maintaining everything. He was our IT support for many people. So he served the church, our school, with all his many skills. He was my confidant, his helper, person to bounce ideas off, and he was always wanting to please. So needless to say, there's lots of things we used to do that we just don't have the ability or time to do now. We used to like to camp a lot off grid and do all sorts of things that we just can't really do now. But I'm learning to take care of things on my own. It's such a learning curve. Everything takes so much more time than it did when he was here. And we supported each other well, and so much more to do. I just really can't do it all anymore. I had to resign my job. And my children are struggling, but we're doing okay. But it's been difficult. Sometimes it feels like being half a person when you lose your spouse. We were a team. We always worked together to raise the kids and accomplish our goals, big or little. And it's hard now without his thoughts, making all those decisions myself. And I miss his company and just the mundane stuff and camaraderie, doing whatever we did. And I miss having someone who was always there for me. I could always count on. I miss looking forward to retirement, our future, things we thought about doing, being grandparents, growing old, having someone there when you have to go for that operation or whatever. And, being able to recount the old and precious memories we've shared our years together. So feels like starting all over, but alone, so it's difficult. But still, I trust and believe that suffering's just not for anything. God still has a plan for me, and will use these circumstances in which I find myself for my ultimate good in His glory. It's a struggle to believe that at times my friends, family, and church family have been unbelievably supportive, coming alongside me these last 2.5 years to help me, encourage me, and let me know I'm still loved and valued. So I have been blessed that I don't harbor bitterness in my heart towards the defendant. I do have a willingness to forgive him, but forgiveness doesn't mean just letting someone off the hook, but that they need to come to grips with what they've done and fully acknowledge all their actions and how they were wrong, and seek that forgiveness. And this would include, all along, things that the prosecution proved during the trial, things that he said about his experience that weren't true, that gave him more jobs. Choosing the route he chose is more dangerous, but chose it for whatever reason. So just understanding that it was all these things that led up to this accident. Of course, he didn't mean to kill people that day. We know that. Who would do that? And But all these things, the reckless driving and all this, and then ultimately, failing to take that ramp and choosing to drive into the traffic that was stopped. So all these things together, he needs to have, take the responsibility, admit that, and not just be sorry that it all happened, but own up to his part. And ideally, prison time would bring a person to admit and assume responsibility for the actions. Ultimately, it's God, through Jesus Christ, that's the forgiver of all our wrongdoings. And he only requires their admission of guilt and belief in him. And I do hope that for the defendant. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor, the people would next ask Ms. Elizabeth Harrison to give her input to the court.
Good afternoon, my name is Elizabeth Harrison. My dad was my do-it-all hero, last-minute lifesaver and longtime provider, teacher, and twin flame. He was my no matter what. My dad made my life full of spice, laughter, art, and adventure. Every day I wake up and my life is lacking. In my daily life, I am missing my dad's humor, personality, strength, and motivation. He was always making jokes, always teasing us. I loved joking with my dad. We were on the same wavelength. Nobody can make me smile as big as my dad could. No one can make me laugh as hard as my dad could. My dad had a bottomless source of motivation. He worked incredibly hard every single day. He wasn't afraid to do the hard things. When everyone else was too tired, my dad found the energy. When everyone else was too busy, my dad made the time. When no one else had the resources, my dad did. My dad was my resource for so many projects, whether they be school-related or personal art projects. His bank of knowledge was so vast, and he endlessly supported me in every way he could. I will never again be able to ask for his advice or receive his help and support. In all of my projects, he was my biggest supporter. No one will ever get to ask my dad for the permission to marry me. I will never be able to be given away on my wedding day, and I have no one to walk me down the aisle. My dad was always really good with kids. I love to watch him tease and tickle them. My dad, or my kids, will never have my dad as their grandpa. They will never get to climb up onto his lap, listen to stories, or go on four-wheeler rides with him. There is such a large hole that my dad leaves in my life. The biggest hole is feeling that I was his priority. He always made time for me. Nothing was more important to him than his family. He was the only person I could count on to go to the ultimate lengths for me when I was in need. No matter the time, place, task, my dad showed up for me. He never let me down. He was the only person I felt safe asking for what I really needed, because I knew that he would stop at nothing to show up for me, and that he would do it because of his unconditional love for me. He took care of me out of his selfless and sacrificial love, even when I couldn't offer anything in return. My dad was the only person I could trust in every situation. He was my no matter what, no matter what. My dad was strong for me, but now I am strong for myself. My dad was brave for me, but now I'm brave for myself. He was our fearless leader, but now day by day, I'm learning to be fearless.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Your Honor, we next ask Ms. Megan Harrison to give her input to the court.
My name is Megan Harrison, and I am the daughter of Doyle Harrison, who was one of the victims killed in this incident. The events of April 25th, 2019 has changed my life forever, and it will never be quite the same. That day, my dad was taken away from me. A huge person in my life just never came home. I miss my dad every day, and it is just really sad to me to know that I am living the rest of my life without him. And he was not there for my high school graduation. He was not there for my 18th birthday. He was not there to help me move into my college dorm. And he is not here to see what I'm doing and where I'm going in my life. And he will not be there for anything ever. I will never get to have an adult relationship with my dad, which is the most devastating to me. I will never get to talk to him, hug him, ask him for advice, receive his help, or laugh with him or anything for the rest of my life. The only comfort that I hold is that I know I will see him again one day in heaven. I wish that my dad had come home from work that day, and I have never experienced such a loss before. It is something that has deeply affected me, and I never expected this to happen to me. I'm saddened that I will never be able to make new memories with him. He will not walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. He will not meet my kids. He was my dad. He was my supporter, my teacher, and my hero. And he was someone I could always count on to be there for me, and now I did not have that. And my family and I have suffered a lot due to our loss, and we have had to learn a lot. However, I do not have hatred or anger in my heart for the person responsible. Because Jesus Christ has forgiven me and the sins of the world, I have been able to forgive him. I do believe that they need to take responsibility for their actions. I know they did not intend for this to happen, but because of their actions, it did happen. And they have to accept what they did and the damage that they have caused. And I'm sorry for all the suffering that everyone involved has experienced. And I know that I don't get to have my dad for the rest of my life, but I hope that the defendant's son can have his dad for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the people would ask Miss Amy Bailey to address the court now.
Okay. My name is Amy Bailey, the niece of Bill Bailey. Uncle Bill was the smartest guy I have ever met, and yet one of the humblest. He had a witty sense of humor and a big heart. I have so many memories of watching ruckus with Dad and Uncle Bill. I loved being invited to his apartment to play with his computer, but we had one of our own. I remember being about 7, and he let me use it without fear that I would break it somehow. In 2nd grade, he volunteered his telescope to my class for our astronomy lesson. Even though it was cloudy that night, he still took the time to show us how to use it by focusing on a nearby streetlight. He always gave the biggest hugs and had the biggest smile. He was one of the best uncles in the world, and he took his job of spoiling his nieces and nephews very seriously. In regards to the defendant, actions have consequences. If he had stopped at Bertha Pass to let his brakes cool down, or he had used the runaway trip ramp, we would not be here today. What is even worse, he made an intentional decision to turn into traffic, making the choice that his life was more important than everyone else on that road that day. He has caused so much pain for my family, especially my aunt. What angers me the most is that he refuses to take any responsibility for his actions that day. Our family has been forever changed by this crash. There will always be a missing person at the table during family gatherings. I love and miss him very much. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
And Your Honor, we would next ask Mr. Dwayne Bailey to address the court.
My name is Dwayne Bailey. William Dale Bailey Jr., or just Bill, to those that loved him, my brother. He was 2.5 years older until April 25th, 2019. There was not a day in my life he wasn't there for me. We were more than brothers, he was my friend. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights over the last 2.5 years I have laid in bed writing and rewriting in my head what I would say today. I'm not sure I have the word to describe what the day was like. How do you explain what it was like getting a call from your sister like Gabe, asking if you've heard from my brother while watching 10 o'clock news the coverage of the horrible inferno of the crash? How do you explain what it was like while driving toward the crash from Aurora, listening to your daughter call hospital after hospital, hoping your brother was just injured? How do you explain what it was like near I-70 at 6th Avenue, hearing your daughter hang up at the last hospital, when suddenly you're overcome with the horrible smell of burnt tires, diesel fuel, and the sinking realization your brother is gone? How do you explain what it was like searching the pitch-black soccer field where my brother was flying drones earlier that day with a cell phone flashlight? Because you don't want to dash the hopes of his wife that he's there and not involved in the crash. How do you explain what it was like to drive on the very on-ramp my brother took that day, to give his information to the officers there, knowing his body was still in his car, not far from where you are? Then decided to go home with her because you don't want her to be alone. Getting maybe 3 hours of sleep, only to wait for a phone call from the coroner asking for the dental records to identify him. How do you explain what it was like for your sister-in-law later to go back to that same dentist? How do you explain what it was like telling your other brother or sister, especially his mom, that their oldest son and their brother was gone? How do you explain what it was like when planning my brother's cremation, telling the mortician because the condition of his body, it won't be necessary or even possible to redress him? How do you explain what it was like in August of 2019 at a Billy Joel concert with my daughter when I suddenly started crying? I remember looking around just wondering how could all these people be so happy when I was so sad? How can you imagine how it would feel? But I'll tell you, the reality is far worse than you can imagine. I've heard people pain mentioned as a hole in his heart. That doesn't seem to be descriptive enough. It was more like a gigantic canyon-sized gash split in my heart in two. I no longer agree with the saying, time heals all wounds. Time may ease your wounds, but it can't completely heal them. I no longer cry at concerts, and my life is mostly back to normal. But the lamp has been empty seated at our family gatherings, and one less voice in our conversations. No amount of time will change that. My earliest memories of Bill are the two of us sitting in front of the TV watching NASA space watches. I'm sure the whole family was there, but it's just the two of us in my memories. We took time about California vacation to see the moon landing and Neil Armstrong's walk on the moon. Our fascination with space travel and rockets led us to build and fly model rockets as kids, a hobby we continued until his last days. In addition to the rockets Bill loved most, almost anything that flew, from kites to RC gliders to RC drones. He was flying not far from here that day. He loved to video his flights, studying the music and posting them to Vimeo. A great thing the internet is that those videos are still there today when I want to visit him. We shared a first date set up with my dad without going to details. Let's say the date didn't go well, but that's okay. We both ended up with who we were meant to be. I married my wife Dana. Bill married Gage. Bill was the best man at our wedding. He loaned me money when I was short to buy the house we still live in. He was there for my daughter was born 2 months early in intensive care. Every holiday, birthday, and other special event was spent as one big family. Bill was an amazingly smart man who seemed to be born with a book in his hand. Everything he needed to know in life, he pretty much taught himself. As a teenager in the mid-60s, he was already working with IBM computers as an Explorer Scout. His only formal education post-high school was a 2-year electronics school in Oklahoma. He worked his way through many jobs and expanded his knowledge until he works as an engineer. To be an engineer without a college degree is a pretty amazing feat. So much though, one of his employers offered to send him to college so they could pay him more for the job he was already doing. He was awarded 2 patents for his work before retiring in 2015. Bill seemed to know everything about almost everything. He was a great trivia and wrote poetry as a hobby. He was everything a person could want in an older brother, a person I looked up to my entire life. His last great adventure we took together was total solar eclipse in 2017. We were in a house on the shores of Lake McConaughey in Nebraska, invited by brother Larry, both of their spouses, my daughter Amy, and some other friends. It was an amazing weekend. So in fact, we agreed to make a trip to Mexico in 2024. For the next North American total eclipse. I don't know if that trip will happen now. If it does, I know Bill will not be there. That brings us to why we're here today. I get so angry when I see the news media or self-pronounced self-defense lawyers on social media describing this tragic event as an accident. Like some fender bender where you exchange information and go about your day. This is a massive crash described by one first responders as a war zone. It's a complicated case that if you did not attend or watch the trial, you really have no business commenting or forming an opinion on the cause. It was a series of fatal mistakes that directly led to this tragedy. A correct decision by any one of them, and we may not be here today. He lied and exaggerated experience. Castellano Trucking probably wouldn't have hired him if he hadn't. He chose a route he wasn't qualified for, through the mountains that wasn't necessary or safe for him to drive. He drove above the speed limit, overused his brakes, causing him to fail, overheat and fail. There was evidence of that at Berthoud Pass when they were already smoking. He stopped to check them. If he only made a better decision, stayed longer, allowed them to cool, or better yet, called a mechanic to check them. Of course he didn't. He didn't, and he continued on, continued his pattern of fatal decisions by using the wrong gear cresting the hill at Tennessee exit. Had he been in the proper lower gear, he could have taken a better control of his speed without overusing his brakes. He chose to bypass the right truck ramp, his last and only chance to stop the truck without crashing. We will never know the real reason why he failed to use that ramp that day. His decision is inexcusable and angers me every time I see the video. He has the right lane when he drives right under the sign and then inexplicably turns left and away from it. At that point, he sealed his fate. He's going to crash somewhere. When he tried to find a place to run off the road, again, he makes a fatal decision to continue down the hill without looking for a spot to run off. Granted, that speed is going would have been difficult because he's going so fast because he didn't downshift the right gear before he started down. We've all seen the video as the defendant approaches the bridge, faced with one last decision. Does he run in the back of the semi on the side of the road, or does he turn into traffic? Objection.
No, sir.
Okay, you are.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No one has said at this point he intentionally caused this crash.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
No one, sorry, let me get a second. No one has said at any point he intentionally caused this crash. But in this decision, I would argue he made a deliberate and intentional decision that his life was more important than every mile on the road that day. If he hits the park semi, he'd probably be injured and may die. Would it have been better for the park semi? Would it have been better if he hits the park semi? Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Take your time, Mr. Bailey.
Would it have been better for the innocent people on the road that day if he had hit that semi? Probably, but we will never know. He chose to turn left into stop traffic because he cited his best chance of surviving. He turned left, closed his eyes. Why did he close his eyes? Because he didn't want to see the hell he was about to bring to the innocent people who were unfortunately there that day. In doing so, he ended the lives of Miguel, Lamas, Arellano, Doyle Harrison, Stanley, Politano, and my brother Bill. Injured many more and brought terror to everyone there. This wasn't an accident. The summation of all these decisions became a criminal act for which he was correctly charged, tried, and convicted by a jury of his peers, people who actually heard the evidence and made the correct decision to convict the defendant. From this point on, I'm speaking only for myself, for not all my family will agree with my sentence and opinions. In my opinion, the sentence of less than 20 years would be a slap in the face of the victims. There needs to be a clear message sent to the defendant as well as other truck drivers, the incredible responsibility you take on driving an 80,000-pound potential missile down the highway. Having said that, when I heard the defendant could pinheadedly get the equivalent of a life sentence, my compassionate side has difficulty with that. I don't think any of the victims or society in general would benefit from the defendant spending the rest of his life in jail. For my part, something above 20 years and something less than the maximum would be okay by me. With that, I want to thank the court and all the Jefferson County Court employees for making the legal part of this nightmare bearable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Your Honor, the people would next ask Mr. Lamas Arellano to speak to the court. He does, however, need a Spanish interpreter.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Uriel Lamas, hermano de Ángel Lamas, que murió.
Good afternoon, my name is Uriel Lamas. I am the brother of Ángel Lamas, deceased.
Lo que quiero decir yo desde ese día que mi hermano faltó en este mundo, la vida de mi madre ha cambiado por completo, ha sido un desastre. Porque desde que mi hermano nació tenía tan solo 24 años, desde que él nació hasta el último día de su vida estuvo con mi madre.
So I want to say that since this happened, my mother's life has been turned upside down. It's been a disaster because he was only 24 years old, and since the moment he was born until his last day, he was with my mom.
Él llegó a este país muy chiquito y estuvo siempre para sacar a mi madre adelante y preocupándose por los demás.
Ever since he got to this country, when he was very small, he tried to get to make the best out of for my mom and to make the situation better.
Sí, porque desde que mi hermano faltó, desde ese día, toda la familia por completo hemos quedado destrozados. Tengo una hermana que está un poquito mala. Ella por una semana, todas las noches batallamos mucho con ella. No podía dormir, se salía para la calle, gritaba, levantaba sus manos que quería irse con su hermano, preguntaba por él que dónde estaba, que ella lo quería para atrás.
So ever since my brother has been gone, my family has been destroyed. I have a sister that has not been doing well for an entire week. She was not able to sleep. She would go out into the streets screaming and asking for her brother, asking where he was and wanting him back.
También tengo a mis hijos, tengo a mis sobrinos que siempre están preguntando por mi hermano. Dicen que él cuándo va a regresar, que dónde está. Y yo les digo que ya está descansando en el cielo, que ya no va a venir con nosotros.
And my children and my nephews are always asking where my brother is. They'll go, where is he? When will he be back? And I tell them that he is resting in heaven and that he's not coming back.
Cuando hicimos su funeral de mi hermano, que lo despedimos, tenía una cantidad enorme de gente por la clase de persona que era él, que sus amigos, los cercanos, se sorprendían y decían, si muriéramos alguno de nosotros, no juntaríamos la gente que tiene él, por la clase de persona que era.
And when we were at my brother's funeral, when we were saying goodbye to him, there was an incredible amount of people that showed up, lots of people. But that was because of the type of person that he was, and his friends could not believe it, and that so many people showed up, and they said that if they had died, there would be no way that they could have accumulated the amount of people that showed up because of the type of person that he was.
Y muchas personas también me dicen, ¿para qué estás en ese juicio? ¿Para qué vas a perder tu tiempo? ¿Para qué estás ahí? La razón por la que estoy yo aquí es para buscar justicia y que por luchar por los que tenemos vida, que día con día andamos en los caminos trabajando, luchando para sobrevivir, para pagar uno sus biles, todo, y tener cuidado uno con los demás y los demás con uno.
And so a lot of people have asked me why I have been here during this trial and why I was wasting my time showing up. And I tell them that I am here to seek justice. I am here to fight for the ones that are still alive, for all of us that are out there on the roads trying to survive, trying to pay our bills, and trying to be mindful of the safety towards others so that those others can also be safe towards us.
Y si digo esto es porque mi trabajo es de manejar todos los días en toda la ciudad y he estado involucrado no en accidentes grandes, en accidentes de carros, pero lo primero que hago es dañar mi troca, mis carros para sacarme, para los lados donde puedo evitar el daño a personas inocentes.
And I say this because for my job, I drive all over the city, and I have had accidents, not big ones, but those like in a car. And when I am in my truck, I try to avoid an accident, and I'll go out of my way in order to avoid harming innocent people.
Gracias, es todo.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, sir.
Gracias, señor.
Your Honor, the people would next ask Ms. Gage Evans to address the court.
My name is Gage Evans. Bill Bailey was my husband, my friend, and my partner. He was my teammate. We actually called ourselves Team Bailey Evans. There was nothing that Team Bailey Evans couldn't handle. It might be a house repair or a challenge that one of us was having or a trip we were planning. We would handle it, whatever it was, together. Now without Bill, the team is no longer, and I don't have the support I'm used to. Bill gave me confidence and joy every day. My confidence is now shattered. My joy is absolutely gone. I used to be part of a team. Now I have no team or teammate. I am a table with one leg. I am a boat with no rudder. It is impossible to function without those essential parts that make up a thing or a person. Because this is supposed to be a statement about how the horrible crash on April 25th, 2019 has affected me and will affect me in the future, I will tell you my very personal story. I have struggled all my life with mental health issues. This horrible and necessary tragedy took from me my main support system, which was Bill. Without him, the harm done to my mental health is real and tangible. I see a psychiatrist who manages my antidepressant medication. Bill and I were seeing a counselor who helped us build a relationship that was strong and supportive. Since Bill's death, I have increased my visits to both counselors. Most of this therapy is not covered by insurance, so it is expensive treatment. My psychiatrist recently prescribed anti-anxiety medication in order to help get me through each day with purpose and productivity. I was married once before I met Bill. That was a very difficult relationship. My self-esteem and confidence rose sharply immediately when I met Bill. He was the first person in my life with whom I felt I could be my most true and honest self. It was so freeing and affirming for me. Bill understood me like no one else and nurtured me with his kind and gentle patience. Every day with Bill was a new adventure. Even if all we were doing was hanging out at home with the dog and cats. Even going to grocery shopping or fixing dinner were opportunities for Bill to tell a funny anecdote or make a humorous observation on the absurdities of life. Then came the day when a reckless semi-truck driver committed a heinous act of violence. Reports said that 4 people died in the fiery crash, but reports were not entirely accurate. Many lives were lost that day from the initial impact and from the injuries, both physical and emotional. As for me, the person that my family and friends and that I knew died that day as well. I fear for my future and dread every day, hence the anti-anxiety medication. I hope that with the help of my friends and family and counselors, I can build a new person and a new life. But she will be a different person, than the one I do not know yet. It won't be easy because of the black hole opened in me when Bill was killed. Black hole, as Bill will tell you, swallows everything that comes near it, even light. I am trying to salvage any part of myself that does not get sucked up into that black hole, but it will take every ounce of energy every day, and it is exhausting to actually make the decision to stay alive every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
How does the court wish me to address it? First, does the court wish me to address this in regard to the number of years in the Rogel case?
I have no preference.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with that. I believe that counts 1 through 6 are mandatory 10 to 32-year sentences pursuant to CRS 18-1.3406, which would require a 60-year minimum. I believe counts 7 through 14 and count 21 and 22 are mandatory 5 to 15-year Department of Corrections sentence, which would require a 50-year minimum. I believe that the PSI is correct in the sense that it requires the court to enter consecutive sentences. I believe that counts 32 through 35 are not mandatory. However, I do believe that they would merge with counts 1 through 4. I believe that counts 36 and 37 are not mandatory, but they would also merge with counts 5 and 6. I think count 38 is the misdemeanor, and I believe that could be run concurrently regardless. And count 39 through 42 are misdemeanors, and we would be asking the court to essentially either run them concurrent or close them out with a jail sentence. In addressing the Robles case, Your Honor, I believe that was the case that was issued during the time when the statute that was controlling was 1611-309. And I think that the court is correct in its analysis when it asked Mr. Colgan about the other statutory provisions that allow this court to do something else. And I think that the court can, but I don't believe it can do so in the first instance. I believe that there has to be a report from the Department of Corrections, and the court must then make specific findings. Having said that, I would ask this court, as an act of transparency and everything else, because it does not, I believe, require it, that if this court is going to make those findings, I would ask the court, after the Department of Corrections issues a report, to make sure that the court sets a hearing to make those findings and allow the victims to be heard in regard to what those findings are and what the court would sentence.
That would absolutely be my intent.
Thank you.
Which is not an indication that I've prejudged anything.
Understood. I appreciate that, Your Honor. Thank you. As I was writing this, Your Honor, what came to mind was, how do you quantify the loss of a loved one? I don't think that you can, especially in an act as traumatic as this. There's moments that everybody understands can't be shared again. They don't get the support. These families have a hole in a place that's empty now because of someone else's actions. And what I heard resoundingly from each and every single one of them was an idea that there is an element of forgiveness, but that forgiveness needs to come with something as important as responsibility and accountability. The defendant asked this court for mercy. The families asked for accountability. Responsibility has not been something that has been understood by this defendant. These families had to sit and listen to the defendant take the stand and say that he did nothing wrong. They had to listen to the testimony and evidence about him nearly running individuals off the road before this and disregarding the rules of the road, driving past an individual on his way up the hill and going fast enough that he couldn't stop coming down. And no one's indicating that the defendant in this case did something intentionally. But Your Honor, I I would submit to you that selfish acts have consequences too. And in this instance, he's yet to learn that. And it's an important thing that he needed to hear. For 2.5 years, these families have been listening to everything that is about the defendant. And I want the court and the public and everybody else to know that this isn't about that. This is about their views and what they want to see happen in this case. We didn't get to hear until the trial about Alexandra LaGuardia, who has flashbacks when she looks in the mirror, because she has a scar on her face that will never heal. It will be there, and she has to live that nightmare every single day of her life. Or Leslie Ross, who has broken bones and part of her face peeled off. And the 4 individuals who died in that fiery crash. And I guess I called it a crash because the word I don't want to use that gets bandied about is accident. This was not an accident. While not intentional, it was the product of so many choices that could have been stopped. But the defendant was being selfish, and he was acting as if he didn't care what happened to others, and he put his wants above everybody else's needs. I will tell this court, this is one of the cases in my 21 years that has affected me greater than anything else. And I had to sit and beg a mother and a brother not to sit in the courtroom during part of the crash scene in the photographs that were part of this. And I had to know that I had to put those on to prove my case. But I scarred them for life because of a decision that I made. He hasn't learned that yet, and he needs to know that that's an issue. The jury spoke. Your Honor, everyone here understands the defendant didn't intend to kill anyone, but he did act like he didn't care. Commercial motor vehicles are different than cars, and these drivers hold the driving community's lives in their hands. When you act recklessly and you put a reckless act on top of a reckless act, and that act becomes something where you get yourself in over your head, while not intentional, it becomes extreme indifference. When you lie to get a job and you get the next job and you put yourself into a position that you shouldn't be in, and you disregard every safety measure put in place, it becomes extreme indifference to everyone. As the potential for a massive catastrophic consequence increases, in other words, the more people you can kill at one time, so does the duty that you owe to them around you. Nobody should say that this is an accident. If a defendant had lied and disregarded safety protocols and made a decision to disregard a measure that would have saved everyone with their own momentary gain, or for their own monetary or momentary gain, and they killed people, no one would have an issue if this were a doctor who was saying, sure, I'm a podiatrist, but I can do brain surgery. Or I'm an airline pilot that flew a little Cessna, but I'm going to climb into a commercial airline and I'm going to crash. Everyone would say something different. That bias is one that we all face because we don't understand how dangerous these things are. The defendant made those choices. I'm going to ask the court specifically now to remember the individuals who were affected by this, and I think the court's heard from them. But we had Mr. Miguel Lamas Arellano, Mr. Stanley Politano, Bill Bailey, and Doyle Harrison, who can't be here and speak for themselves. I'm going to ask the court to sentence the defendant to the 110 years with the understanding that the court has made that this defendant has the option, if this court wishes to do so, to make a different decision 91 days from now. And I will let this court know that these families had to sit here. And there was no one on the sidelines yelling out to object to the defendant's choices on the day that he got behind the wheel. So the person that has to speak for all of them is you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Counsel, I have a question for you before you step in.
Yes, Your Honor.
What is the legal impact, if you know, of this merger of the other charges into the assault charges? In other words, is it a merger application versus concurrent sentencing that would take place?
It's the people's position, Your Honor, and I could be wrong, but I believe that what would happen is that because it's out of the same events, that it should actually merge specifically. They are separate counts, so if one were to not stand, that count would still stand. However, the sentence should merge because it's based on identical evidence.
All right, thank you. I'll hear from the defendant if the defendant wishes to address the court.
Your Honor, the defendant's wife was didn't feel like she could address the court. Would you allow her to address the court now? I know you gave her an opportunity and.
I will.
All right, thank you. So, that would be Lorena Esquiras, Your Honor.
If you begin by stating your name, please.
Mi nombre es Lorena Kerry.
Name is Lorena Kerry.
All right, go ahead.
Yo estoy aquí, yo pienso que Rogel no, él también fue una víctima más de ese accidente.
I'm here to say that Rogel was another victim of this accident.
Él también ese accidente le dejó daños físicos en su cerebro. Él todo este tiempo ha recibido terapia de psiquiatra, de psicólogo. No es una persona, en el tiempo que vivimos juntos, no se sentía bien, dormía mal, sufría a diario, lloraba a diario, se sentía mal a diario, no por culpabilidad, sino por las personas.
Well, he also received some damages from this accident. Mentally, he has been receiving some therapy, mental therapy all this time. And the whole time that I have known him, I know that he's been having a really hard time sleeping well and just been crying and feeling really bad. And most of that is because of all the people.
¿Qué puedo decir? Que eres una persona maravillosa. La mejor persona que yo he conocido en mi vida es él. Buen padre, buen esposo, buen hijo, buen hermano, amigo.
What else can I say about him? Just that he's a wonderful person. He's probably the most wonderful person I know. He has been always a really good dad, a good husband, a good son, a good brother.
Teníamos tantos planes en la vida, muchos proyectos, muchas cosas. Él solo quería salir adelante.
We have many plans in our lives, many projects. We just want to, move ahead.
Él no quiso hacerle daño a nadie. Él no chocó ningún carro. Él chocó con el camión. Ese camión no tenía que haber estado nunca ahí. Él no chocó ningún carro, nunca intentó dañar a nadie. Él intentó dañarse él.
He didn't try to hurt anybody. He didn't try to hit any other car. That truck shouldn't been there. The truck was not right. He tried to hurt himself, not hurt anybody else. He didn't do this on purpose.
Yo pienso que él no se merece esto.
I don't think he deserved this.
¿Por qué? Porque estaba trabajando, porque quería salir adelante, porque quería ser una mejor persona.
because he was working, because he was trying to move on, because he was trying to be a good person. He doesn't deserve this.
Su familia también tiene un gran hueco en el corazón.
His family also had a big hole in their hearts.
Tiene un hijo que a diario pregunta por él, que necesita a su papá. Tiene una mujer, tiene una madre, tiene un hermano, toda su familia.
He does have a son that is asking for him all the time, asking when he's gonna come back. He does have his woman, he has a mom, he has a brother, he has his family.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I will hear from the defendant. If the defendant wishes to address the court.
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to say something, but in English at least.
If you want to speak from the table, just make sure the microphone is there so you can speak.
Your Honor, can I speak from there?
You can go to the podium.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, can I speak right there?
No, sir, right where you are.
Thanks for the opportunity. My English is not very well, but I'm gonna try. My life has been very difficult, sad, depressing, terrible, bad, since April 25th, 2019. I know that it has been hard and heartbreaking for everyone involved in this tragedy. I don't know why I'm alive and for what. I'm dying my life. I'm dying my life. It is hard to live with this trauma. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I'm thinking all the time about the victims. When Mr. Miguel Lamas, Stanley, Politano, Doyle Bailey, and Doyle Harrison, when they lost their life, a part of me went with them. I swear to God, a part of me will be missing forever as well. I don't know if everybody understands what I'm saying because my English is not very well. But it's hard. This was a terrible accident. I know. I take the responsibility. But it wasn't intentional. I was working like any normal days. I have never thought about hurting anybody in my entire life. And my Jesus Christ, you know that. You know my heart. Like my mom say, I make donation to St. Jude. I help foundation. I help people in need because that's what I have in my heart. I love the next person more than myself. And my God, you know that. I am not a bad person, Jordan. It's hard for me and for them. I'm begging for
I'm begging for forgiveness from everyone involved in this pain, to end this torturing pain, to end this torturing pain. And be honest, I wish I could hug, cry with them, and pray with them, and beg for forgiveness. Everything to get better. I am not a criminal. I am not a murderer. I am not a killer. When I look my charges, we are talking about a murder, which is not me. I have never thought about hurting anybody in my entire life. And my Jesus Christ, He knows that. One second, please. I know that you have to take a decision. I'm gonna agree. I know 4 people lost their life. But the accident, it was intentional. It was intentional, Your Honor. I did all that I could as a man. I don't know. I don't know if you would be angry with me, or if anybody would be angry with me if I say that. But the shoulder and the federal moral carry is emergency escape road to safety. I take the shoulder, Your Honor, to save life. Just please think I put myself in harm's way in order to avoid causing harm to anybody else. Your Honor, if I turn my truck into the traffic, more people would have been died or injured. And I didn't. I swear, by Jesus Christ, you know that. All what I have in my heart is love God and be a good person, because God knows that I love the next person more than myself. I am a good son. I am a good father. I am a good husband, a good friend. When I pray, I ask Him to God every day for forgiveness. I ask Him. He sees me crying. He hears me crying. It is hard, Your Honor. Yes, I have 26 years old. I was working. I am an immigrant man. I come from Cuba. I was working for American dreams, for a better future. With all due respect, don't be angry with me if I say that, but I was not out robbing a bank or a store. I was not out shooting up crowds or a school. I was was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. I was working, I lost my brain. I lost my brain. The truck driver, they know it's hard moment. You can't do anything. You can't do anything. You know, I don't know nothing about the law. I don't know if you're gonna be angry with me if I say that, or anybody gonna be angry with me if I say that. I am not a criminal. I was not out to assault anybody. I would have preferred God taking me instead of that, because this is no life. And dying alive, this is no life. Why am I alive for what? For what? This is no life, Your Honor. I think all time about their family. I know they have son, they have brother. I saw that on trial, Mr. Miguel Lamas' family. I heard his brother. I feel pain because I have brother too. I heard Stanley Politano family. I heard son and Bailey family. Doyle Harrison family. Your Honor, I would like to say so many things, but my English is not very well. Just I'm trying to explain what I felt. It was 2 years, Your Honor. 2 years and a few months on bonds without GPS. And I didn't run. I didn't run because I respect them. I respect the laws. I respect this court. I respect the district attorney. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect my family. And I respect myself. I respect the people who believe in me that I'm not a criminal. And I respect God. And begging for forgiveness. It was so. I want to say sorry. Sorry for the loss. Sorry for the people injured. I know they have trauma. I know. I feel that. But please, don't be angry with me, please. But just put on my side. I was working for a better future for my family. I have never thought about hurting anybody in my entire life. And when you cry, you know that. Of 2017, I was happy because I helped the St. Jude Research Hospital, because I help foundation to help others. I feel good, happy when I do that, you know, because just that is what I have in my heart.
Just be a good person. I'm a family man. I don't have enemy. I have a clean record. I don't like guns. I don't like drugs. I don't like alcohol. I don't like nothing of that. Just what I like is be with my family, with my son. My life now, to be honest, it's not real life. I feel empty inside. I don't have heart. I feel empty. It is hard. I ask to God too many times, why then? And not me. Why I survived to that accident? Why or for what? This is not life. I'm not saying that I am a suicidal. No. I'm not gonna do that, never. That go against my religion. That go against God. I don't want to die. It's what I want today. I'm begging for forgiveness. I wish all the heart felt pain to go away from all our hearts. God bless everybody, you know. I'm sorry for it, because I take a long time. But I want to say this since 2019. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Noritsky, I neglected to ask about restitution, and before I continue with the sentencing, I want to make sure that that has all been addressed. There was a motion, then an amended motion.
There should be two specific motions, one for over $11,000 to crime victim comp, and the other to Mr. John Ho and the FIA Group insurance. So it should be $11,116.52 to crime victim comp and $2,995.45 to Mr. John Ho and the FIA Group insurance. I believe there's some subrogation that is involved with that as well.
So those are two different amounts, not one amending the other.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And Mr. Colgan, is there any objection to the restitution amount?
I recall seeing the one for $29.95. I don't recall seeing the other one.
They were
I don't
filed.
object to the one for $29.95, but I must have missed the one for $11,000.
Your Honor, that's to crime victims compensation, and that's expenses that were paid out regarding funeral expenses and so forth.
Can I have just a few days to look at that, Your Honor? I don't think I'm going to object, but I should take a look before I take a position.
I'm going to give you 2 weeks to advise me about the restitution amount that's going to be. So obviously, this is a tragedy. That is a statement that does not begin to capture what happened here. 4 lives lost. 2 others who had serious bodily injury as the law defined it. Many, many others who had physical injury, and many, many more who had emotional injury. And I do not discount at all the impact on the defendant and his family as well. To the families of the 4 who lost their lives, my condolences, my sympathy to you. As I was reading the victim impact statements and thinking back on the testimony at trial, and now having heard from folks here that I was struck by, there's a holiday tradition in my home of watching It's a Wonderful Life. And the message of that movie is that the meaning of a life is determined by the impact on other people. And Mr. Politano, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Lamas, from that standpoint, they had wonderful lives because it's obvious that they had great impact on others. And it is terrible that their lives were cut short. I'm inadequate to speak to your loss. And I know it's going to be especially hard during the holidays. But I encourage you to support one another within your families, each other. Ms. Evans, there's support. Look for it. Use it. And for everybody. Don't bear it alone. Look to others. Share that burden. I know that for those who did not lose family members, who were injured or nearly injured, who were just impacted, that this has had long-term consequences. I was struck by one of the victim impact statements about the fear of just driving down the road and seeing a big rig. Mr. Aguilera-Mederos, I am not angry at you. That is not the role of a judge. There are restrictions on what I can do in this case. I'm going to speak to those a little bit before I impose the sentence. The legislature has told me through the laws of this state what I have to do at a minimum. The jury heard the evidence, and I respect the findings of the jury. As a judge, as a part of our legal system, the jury is the most wonderful invention for justice that man has ever developed. And I have to respect their findings. And I do respect their findings. But the combination of those findings and what the legislature has told me leaves me no discretion on a minimum sentence. The Robles case no longer applies. The Robles case was enacted when the statute said 2 crimes, and it was changed by the legislature to say 2 or more crimes. And that change means that each and every crime of violence has to be sentenced consecutively. And I have looked to make sure that I am denied the discretion to find otherwise. Because I will state that if I had the discretion, it would not be my sentence. By the definition of the law, this was an extraordinary risk crime, and that increases the range. It was a crime of violence, and that mandates both a prison sentence and consecutive sentencing. I want to be clear to everyone. Often when we think of sentencing, we think of closure for the victims and an endpoint for the defendant of what he's facing and for his family and friends. I cannot assure you that we have reached that endpoint. Mr. Maritsky referred to that, and I would say that perhaps the legislature, in imposing a requirement of consecutive sentences, had in mind that there might be cases where a judge should give it further consideration after hearing from the Department of Corrections. And this may very well be one of those cases. In all the victim impact statements I read, I did not glean from them someone saying he should be in prison for the rest of his life and he should never, ever get out. Far from it. There was forgiveness reflected in those statements, but also a desire that he be punished and serve time in prison. And I share those sentiments. This was such a terrible, terrible event, impacted so many people. And I accept and respect what the defendant has said about his lack of intent to hurt people. But he made a series of terrible decisions, of reckless decisions. And I also understand from his fellow truck drivers what they're saying about this could happen to anyone. And I have to say, to some extent, 1, 2 of those things, maybe. But this number of things, I think not. Have no desire personally to see Mr. Aguilera-Mederos in prison for the rest of his life and away from his wife and son. I do not know how this will ultimately resolve. But as I said, I have no qualms that he deserves time in prison in the following sense. Given all the sentencing requirements that I need to consider as an example to others, given what the harm was that was inflicted, and simply the fact that a big rig is something that could inflict horrific, horrific damage, and in this instance did. It is not punishment of the defendant for being a bad person. This punishment for his actions and the results of those actions. So as I indicated, the law gives me no discretion other than to choose a range, within the range, on the first 6 counts. The range is 10 to 32 years on each count. Court sentences the defendant to the minimum part of that range of 10 years, but 10 years on each of counts 1 through 6 to be run consecutively as required by the statute. Similarly, the range on counts 7 to 14, 20, and 21, the criminal attempt charges. Again, they are crimes of violence as found by the jury, consistent with the evidence. The range is 5 to 16 years. I choose the minimum of the range of 5 years, but it's 5 years on each of those counts. And again, they have to be run consecutively. All the assault convictions have to be run consecutively. And again, if I had the discretion, if I thought I had the discretion, I would not run those sentences consecutively. Which is not to say that I would run everything concurrently. I might choose a different minimum. That is partly reflected in my sentence on the vehicular homicide charges. For counts 31, 32, 33, and 34, I sentenced the defendant to 5 years to run consecutively, because there are 4 victims. But concurrently to the other charges, and to the extent they merge, they merge. Counts 35 and 36, vehicular assault. 3 years in the Department of Corrections on each count, concurrent to one another and concurrent to all others. Count 37, reckless driving. Time served of 83 days. Counts 42, 43, 44, and 45, careless driving resulting in death. 1 year of jail. All those counts are concurrent to one another and concurrent to all other sentences to be served in DOC. $83 days of pre-sentence confinement credit is reflected in the PSI. Mr. Colgan, does your client need to be advised pursuant to Rule 32?
Yes,
Mr. Aguilera-Mederos, you have the right to seek review of both your convictions as well as my sentence. There are 2 different aspects of this, actually 3 different aspects of this. One, you have the right to seek an appeal within 49 days. Under the statute by which I sentenced you consecutively, I will receive a report from the DOC, and you have the opportunity to seek reconsideration of the sentence under that statute, as well as to seek a reduction of your sentence under Rule 35B within 126 days. If you are indigent, counsel will be appointed to represent you for any of these post-trial matters, including any appeal. I will give your counsel 14 days to advise me whether the restitution amount is contested. To the extent I impose restitution, which is likely, simply the amount that will need to be determined. You ultimately will have the opportunity to show that you're unable to pay that amount, or there should be special circumstances for the payment. Is there anything else from the people's standpoint that I should advise the defendant under Rule 32?
Not from the people, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Colgan, any questions about my advisement under Rule 32.
No, I believe that was him.
Is there anything else from the people?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything else on behalf of the defendant?
Yes.
Again, my condolences to those who've lost both loved ones, injuries, emotional stress of unbelievable magnitude. Good luck to everyone. Thank you. Court will be in recess